On Two Wheels this week, Jeff spends a day with Kawasaki's new speed machine, the ZX12R. Richard Hammond rides another 400, this time it's a Baby Fireblade, and Wayne has a tall problem to solve. There's more biker chat and another tech tip.
Right, a test for you. Did you know there's a certain Japanese bike manufacturer who also makes aircraft? And did you know they also make a bike that'll do a mile in under 20 seconds? Yes, it's true. And what's the connection? It's aerodynamics. And this, the ZX12R, is full of aerodynamics. In fact, the aerodynamics make it so fast that the European Commission threatened dire consequences if it really did 200 miles an hour. Instead, it does around 188 in the right conditions, which doesn't happen to be now. But that's all a bit academic. It's good for pub talk, but in the real world, what you have is more power than a 5 Series BMW and about a seventh of the weight. Get the picture? This is a serious performance motorcycle. Now you can forget the old ZZR 1100, that's still in production, but this is a completely different bike. The biggest difference is the frame. Gone are the old perimeter frame rails running around here that you get is common on most bikes these days. This has got a monocoque frame, one big aluminium fabrication down the middle there. Houses the fuel tank. This here is just a plastic cover, it's not a tank at all. The filler's there, but the tank is also down here, hear that? So that's the fuel tank. In the centre of this monocoque frame is the airbox, all part and parcel of it with the filters in there. Top here, it's got a little panel for the fuses, but that's all new and really identifies this bike as being something different. Now up front you can see what I'm calling the giant pooper scooper. That's the ram air duct, which Kawasaki says adds actually 12 brake horsepower when you're going at full chat, which is a hell of a lot. Some people have said, why isn't it flush? Well, if it was flush, according to aircraft technology, you lose a lot of that fresh air intake. You're just lost on the aerodynamics. Now the other part of this equation, that's 12 brake horsepower extra, but the rest of it is here. And this brand new engine produces 180 brake horsepower. That's a lot of ponies, that is, let alone all these sheep around here. It's brand new, it's got chrome plated bores, which means they can get the bores closer together. Saves weight, makes the engine much slimmer. Also under this magnesium cover, 12 plate clutch as well. All very neat, copes with all that power. And look up here, fuel injection. Massive chokes there, that's where they're sucking all that air in to get all that power. Whatever, the technology certainly works. The bike feels much lighter than it is, more like a 600 than a 1200, but open that throttle and you know it's a 1200. It's a matter of dialer speed, 90 in first, 120 in second, and so on. But it's not just brute power. The delivery is super smooth and the handling a revelation. Again, this is nothing like the old ZZR 1100, which is like a super tanker in comparison to this. On the ZX12R, you just tip it into the corner and around you go. The suspension is firm but well controlled and the whole bike really feels nimble. A sort of amazing grace. Grace or not, the suspension is fully adjustable, front and rear. And look at this front end. Upside downers on this, 43mm stanchions. 6-pot calipers there, the old 320mm discs. And see this little gizmo here, this little aerodynamic deflector. Now it's not a gimmick, that's actually designed to pick up the airflow there and stop it being disrupted by these calipers. It's so it doesn't have too much drag. All this counts. And here, if you can see them, these little holes here, the air goes into the radiator and would you believe it's actually sucked out through there and around the side of the fairing. Again, this is aircraft technology, comes along there. And see these little wings. Now these aren't designed to keep you down on the ground. Again, this is to disrupt the airflow. It's to stop any messy air from here and off the front wheel coming up the side of the fairing. So it breaks it up, reduces drag again and increases speed. And it's all supposed to work. Aircraft technology. But what are these aerodynamics like for the rider? They're good. The screen's low of course, but the rest of it is very effective at keeping the blast off you. The riding position itself is fairly sporty with a slight tip forward and the seat big and roomy, which is just as well because this bike is absolutely ballistic. It's so responsive and so powerful that you've got to feel right to feel in command. But the poor old passenger has got nothing at all to hold on to. You could in fact strap them down on these bungee hooks, but that wouldn't be very nice, would it? Under here is in fact the pillion seat. You just take this plastic cover off, and under there is a small seat squab. But as I say, with no grab rail, I wouldn't fancy that at all. Just put that back on there. When you're actually coming up to the cockpit, you can't help but miss these mirrors, which look absolutely massive. Again, some people don't like them. They're all aerodynamic. But I'll tell you what, this mirror glass at first feels pretty big. But what you see is your shoulders, not your elbows. Normally on sports bike you see elbows, but not shoulders. If you crouch down over the tank, yes, you get a clear view. But again, most of the time you're sitting fairly upright, so it's only half mirror. Down in here, if I just clamber aboard, the instruments, they're both analogue, speedo and rev counter. But the speedo's very, very small, and those digits are really crammed up. 220 miles an hour it shows on here, and there's just too many of them. So if you are travelling at a fair old lick, which you're bound to be doing, you actually can't clearly read them. On the right is a great big digital display which has got a clock on there, and it's got 2 trip mileage recorders as well. So you change the clock into 1 trip and the other one into the total mileage or the trip. It's also got a fuel gauge at the top and a temperature gauge, very neat, but I prefer a big digital display of the actual speed. After all, it's a Gatto that's going to lose your licence, not the clock. Now at the back here, this very pretty chain isn't just pretty. See these gold side plates? They're specially strengthened. This was a chain made by DID just for this bike. So it's got strengthened side plates and strengthened rollers as well. You can also see this swing arm, which looks a bit odd first off because they call it a pentagonal shape. In there's interior webbing to strengthen the swing arm on both sides, and it's supposed to match the flex and complement it to give the right amount of movement so you haven't got any part too rigid. What also you can't miss is this massive back tyre. This is this big 200 section rear tyre. Forget your 180s, 190s, 200 section. Monoshock tucked away up there, fully adjustable of course. And over on the other side I can just see my reflection in there. Not a pretty sight, but I don't have to tell you that. Massive titanium can, and down at the front end of that is a catalytic converter, all work within the pipe. Makes it very, very neat. So where are we in the hyperbike stakes? At £9,380 on the road, the Quacker is more expensive than the Blackbird or the Hayabusa. But all 3 bikes have a similar performance. The Honda a bit more refined, the Suzuki a bit more of a bruiser, but all 3 will see you losing your licence with a twist too far. Where the Ninja really scores though is in the handling stakes. It's lighter than its competitors and its handling is tauter, well and truly in the sports bike class. Couple that to its slimmer feel and to me more stylish lines, and irrespective of the whose is the fastest of them all debate, I'd say the ZX12 has the edge in the hyper performance class, the ultimate rocket ship class. By the way, not only can you have one in lime green like this one, it also comes in red and a classy silver. Not that you'll be in view long enough for anyone to notice of course, so just enjoy. I'll tell you one thing, this is certainly not a bike for the sheepish.
It's all a case of horses for courses, knowing the right place for the right bike. And when it comes to Baby 400s, well, motorway, wrong place. That's the place for big, heavy, cumbersome, powerful bikes. Small, narrow, twisty country lanes, now that is the right place for nimble, light, fast 400s. And I'm wasting time. Now, a couple of weeks or so back, we took out the little Honda VFR 400R for a blast. And this week we've got its sibling, the CBR, also a 400, but this time it's an inline transversely mounted 4 rather than the little baby V4, the little baby VFR engine in fact. And this, the CBR 400, is the one they call the Baby Blade. Slightly bigger, slightly wider, slightly longer than the VFR, the CBR looks more modern. It does look like a miniature Fireblade. Everything about it says speed and aggression, the geometry of it, the angle of the forks, the way the whole bike leans forward. It turns in quicker than you can possibly imagine. More or less, you think this thing round corners rather than having to actually input anything into the bike. Oh, you naughty thing. You do suggest some evil things, but you do make me laugh. Ah. Yeah, I know. Did you want another sandwich, or are you... Sorry. But she is lovely. Perfect little form and everything there. At the front we've got these fantastic brakes. Stand it on its nose, no problem whatsoever. At the back we've got a really elaborate little swing arm. Nice little details like that, and that great riding position. Certainly compared to the VFR, it feels a lot longer, so you're not as squashed in. It's a bit more relaxed, but you're still right on top of the front wheels, so the turn-in is absolutely incredible. This one's a little bit poorly though. We have to be careful with her because there's a bit of a hesitant engine, so she can't get the thorough spanking that she deserves. We'll be gentle-ish. It's true, there was a bit of a problem here. This bike had been standing for a while, so we had to be rather careful, and it wasn't particularly happy about revving over 7,000 revs, which is a shame on an engine most of whose power is at the top end. Nevertheless, nothing can get in the way of that incredible pin-sharp handling. It is definitely dinky, but for a rider my diminutive stature, it doesn't feel too cramped. On a long journey, okay, it's going to get uncomfy, but for scratching around the back lanes, there's actually enough room to move around on it. Bigger riders, though, are likely to find it a bit of a challenge. It is all about quick reactions, the brakes, the speed of turning, the engine's ability to just whip up the power straight away. It means you really can enjoy whipping along without actually having to go at colossal speeds, legal speeds even. If you're looking at a bike purely as a toy, a bit of Sunday morning fun and nothing else, then any of the Sports 400s has to be worth a look. They're fast enough and most of all, nimble, quick and agile. They're not all that cheap though. This is a G-Reg example CBR 400 and it'll still set you back possibly 3,000. You'd probably get one for about 2.5 eventually, which certainly isn't cheap, but you do get an awful lot of performance and an incredible amount of fun for that.
If I could spend any amount of money on my bike, I think I've already spent it actually. 6,500 quid on my paint job, about just 400 quid on my cans. Stage 1 dyno. There's not really much more I can do with it, to tell you the truth. I'm going to change the visor as soon as I can find one. What I want, but still can't find it yet. I think that's about it.
I've always fancied having a paint job on my bike, so I got a Red Bull one done. Next thing I'm going to get is a race can. And that's about it really for this bike.
If money wasn't an object, I'd have the Yoshimura RS7 race exhaust. Power enhancing, very nice, sounds very nice. I'd have every bolt anodised, bit of tuning done to the engine, black screen, a small number plate, which I haven't got. Mine's perfectly legal and conforms to British standards, approved. Other than that, there's not much else I'd do because I prefer keeping them standard. I don't like going over the top. They look a bit silly.
Kit for my bike, probably get it tuned up, get a race exhaust system, something like the Yoshimura. The bike itself, it's pretty good as it is, so maybe a little bit of tuning, but not much to it.
Yeah, if I could afford it, favourite piece of kit at the moment would have to be a radar detector. Either that or a plastic face to put on for those cameras when they take that photograph of you going through at the wrong speed. Because at the moment, I think every corner you go around, there's a camera. You know, we should all do auditions really, shouldn't we, on motorbikes for them.
And after the break, Wayne gets on his high horse and looks at different seat heights.
Now size really does matter. Every inch makes a difference. I'm on about inside leg measurements, missus. Now just behave yourself. You know, some of you viewers, you're uncontrollable. I'm trying to be deadly serious here. Serious about people like me who are just slightly vertically challenged. So when you're choosing a modern day motorcycle, you have a problem because some are far too big for us. Take this for example. Amongst our varying different types of machines, we've got this, a Triumph Tiger, massive, big trailer bike. And then you move on to such as this, the Model 2000 Fireblade, the ultimate sports machine. And let's move on now to the Triumph Sprint RS, which is an absolutely superb sports tourer. The Virago, Yamaha Virago, famous. It's a custom cruiser bike. There are loads of different types and they have a reasonably low seat height. And then this little baby, a Yamaha Slider, a different type of scooter. But the fact is, all these are all varying different seat heights. Now I'm going to excite you now. I'm going to show you some magic. I have absolutely nothing up my sleeves. In fact, I've got the wrong shirt on, I've got no sleeves at all. And with just a few of those magical words, as in abracadabra. Look at that, eh? I've only got to say those words, abracadabra, and something appears. What on earth is this? I don't know. I tell you what, never work with animals, children and Paul Johnston, eh? We don't need them, for goodness sake. Although, this is one seriously big machine. But what do you expect? It's a trail bike, or that type of machine, and it's a big one at that, so they are very, very seriously high. In fact, well, whatever, with a 29-inch leg measurement, there's not a lot of hope, to be honest with you. So let's see if I can get my leg over this bike without those ladders. Oh, I can get my leg over it, but look, I'm on my tiptoes. In fact, if I'm in front of the, I can't quite touch there. Very iffy, and it is a problem for people like myself on big bikes. Certainly if you're perhaps new to motorcycling and you're still a little bit uneasy, because we're on flat ground now. Just imagine what it'd be like if you had a bit of curvature of the road or even a pothole. You'd definitely be on your backside before you know it. So that's the Triumph Tiger, the big fancy trail bikes. What about the sports bike? Abracadabra. Hey, I'm getting good at this, aren't I, eh? David Copperfield, eat your heart out. Right then. This is the ultimate sports bike, I'm sure you'd agree. Now then, is this a problem or not? Well, on some occasions it is, and it's not necessarily because of the seat height, and this isn't so bad, and I feel quite good. It's often a problem with the reach. Now, I've got to admit, this is quite all right, but they're not all as good. And another factor is the seat width at the front here is quite nice. This particular model does come down a little bit, but on previous model Fireblades it's been a lot wider. On quite a lot of other sport bikes as well, the seat at the front here is quite wide, which does still give you a bit of a problem reaching the ground. But I feel quite at home in this one. But anyway, that's the sports bike. What do we have next? Well, the next was the sports touring machine. So, abracadabra. It's good, this magic thing, isn't it? But I never seem to get quite the model I was thinking of. But anyway, there's not a lot wrong with this Triumph Sprint RS. It is an excellent sports touring machine. And if it's tourer, you want to go places. If you want to go places, you want to be comfortable. And I'll be honest, you will be comfortable, even if you have got this problem of a short inside leg. Because I feel quite confident in here, I can move it around quite nicely. Reach, absolutely superb. So, which brings me to a very simple point. Just because it's big CCs doesn't necessarily mean it's big all round, big seat height, long reach. There are many, many smaller capacity bikes in the 500, 300cc categories that are actually taller than these things. So, get down to your showroom and try them before you decide your limitations. Enough of you, Triumph. Abracadabra. So there we are. The custom machine, in this case the 535 Virago, and it really is low. My feet are flat on the ground here, no problem whatsoever. Lovely riding position, and in fact when you are riding your feet are forward. I would actually say that if you're big and tall, you probably have more problems with this bike than if you're short, because your legs are going to be up here and often in the way because of the feet forward problem here. But it's comfortable, and it's often referred to as a ladies' machine. We're not being funny about it, but I can understand the ladies going towards one of these, and very often the 535 is what you go for. Think big, ladies. Hey, get something big between your legs, because the 1100s are not actually that much bigger. Abracadabra. And finally, the little ones. Well, are they little? Not always. They might be little in CC, but they're not always little in seat height, I can assure you. I have ridden so many of these things. It's deceiving. For example, if I can get it off the stand, here we go, look at that. My feet are only just on the ground, I'm on tiptoes. Some of them are even bigger still, and the reason for it is, it's not so much the height of the seat, it's the width of these footboards, of which are on a lot of them. Now this one hasn't got all the leg shields even, but nonetheless, it's still quite wide. And there are some of them that are even taller and wider. So, what this brings us to is something really very, very simple. You've got to try them. Don't just set your mind on a particular model or type of machine, because you might be just a little bit disappointed. You might not fit it. Go to the showroom, sit on them, try them, and narrow it down that way, because obviously if you fit the bike properly, you're going to be a lot safer. For example, that's why I get the road tests on these little scooters, because my feet fit the floor very sensibly and I'm therefore safe. And safety is of a paramount importance. All right? Now, a bit more magic. Abracadabra. The Fireblade key. Who gives a hoot whether I fit it or not?
Now, if you've got a bike stored, one of the most important things to look after is the battery. And you can have one of these, a battery conditioner, continually monitors the battery voltage and just tops it up now and again. Costs you about 40 quid for a bit of electronic wizardry, but very good. But if you haven't got one of those, you've probably got the good old battery charger. And here we are with this battery on charge, showing about a couple of amps. But that can be too much to put in one go, and you certainly don't want to leave that on all winter long. But what you can do with a couple of old car bulbs or bike bulbs, just solder in here. These two lamps happen to be in series, but just put a flying lead on there, and you're going to put this on the battery terminal and the other lead on the other bulb. And in that way, you're going to drop the current going to the battery by about an amp. And it'll mean the battery doesn't get overcharged then. We'll just do that. Put that on the old battery there. There we go. And there we are. Dropped it down 1 amp.
And on Two Wheels next week, maybe you're just starting out into the world of biking. Well, have no fear, because Wayne is here to guide you through the minefield of biking gear. Next week, he'll kit you out for £200.